the best interview tactic is silence. There are these like awkward moments in the interview where you want to ask the next question, and the directors that just let that moment hang, the person will feel the awkwardness and often will continue to speak. The thing they'll say after a silence can be like very powerful.
Every story is so different, and the loss that people have experienced to get them to this point. And, just you learn these stories and to know that you get to play a key part in capturing these emotions is like so powerful.
I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes it's like, I have to go shoot B-roll. I've started to change the way that I'm thinking about this, and I started thinking about it more as world building. So if you think about a novel where like all of the details are kind of building the world of these characters, and B-roll, which can sound unimportant and boring, if you watch a documentary, is actually so important.
On episode 426 of the podcast, we talk about how to create meaningful documentary-style stories that connect emotionally with viewers. We go over some game-changing techniques for better interviews and B-roll, or as Vanessa calls it, world building. And then why silence and staying rolling are secret weapons for capturing authentic moments. All that and so much more in this super engaging, awesome episode of the show. Here we go. Oh, what's up, my friend? Thank you for being here. And also thank you for humoring me and letting me be a total goofball on these intros. Man, I'm fired up for this episode. I love when I have other filmmakers and production business owners on the show and we get to talk shop. Vanessa's story, the things that she's accomplished and the things that she's working on. You need to know about this woman and the things that she's up to. So you're in for a real treat. This is a really fun conversation. She's just doing some really, really cool stuff. Before we get into that, thank you for being here. If this is your first time, welcome to the Grow Your Video Business Show. My name is Ryan Coral and I'm your host. Did I already say that? I keep messing. Do I mess that up? It's good. We're good, right? And yeah, if this is your first time here, just know that I've been doing video production for 20 years. I have a company. I have a staff. I'm like, what do I call them? A team. Yes. And we've got a studio in Metro Detroit. And the thing I love doing are brand films, brand documentary style, interview style. Those things just like bring so much joy to me. We are wrapping I think it's like a 20-minute documentary on the sport of show jumping. This is the world that we entered into 2017, and we've done a few horse-related projects since then, which is really fun. I didn't know anything about horses until we started doing this work, and that's one of the most fascinating things about this kind of work is that we get to do all sorts of different kinds of projects, learn about different things. One of the things I love about documentary style stuff is to hear people's passion, the thing that drives them, the thing that, when you hear people's why, it's so interesting and engaging. At least it is for me, and that's why I light up doing them and love doing them so much. So if you're new here and you haven't sort of dived in to the world of Studio Sherpas and all the things that I offer, I would love to invite you to get onto my email list because we do all sorts of really cool things to help you grow and scale your video business. If you're just getting started, if you want to get started, if you're just getting started, if you've been doing this for 10 or 15 years, 20 years, I have a guy that just joined my podcast that's been doing this, or just joined my mastermind, not my podcast. He just joined my mastermind who's been in production a little bit longer than me, and actually two guys. And I'm like, that's amazing, right? So I'm trying to create resources and materials that can help you. And obviously lots of free stuff here like the podcast. And something else that I want to invite you to is a free workshop where I take my 20 years of growing this production business, sharing the pitfalls, sharing the wins, things that I've learned, and I want to give that to you so that you can fail faster. So you can get access to this free workshop by going to studiosherpas.com/10xfilmmaker. Okay, studiosherpas.com/10xfilmmaker. Jump into that, and I hope that's helpful for you. Let's get into this episode. Thank you again for being here. buckle your seatbelts because this is going to be a fun ride. Okay, here we go. What's up, friends? Hey, welcome to another episode of the show. Today, my guest is Vanessa Carr. She is a documentary cinematographer and also creator of DocHouse, which I'm very excited for you guys to learn more about. And probably a lot of you already know about this. Vanessa, thank you so much for hanging out with me on this Thursday morning.
I am thrilled to be here.
Did you hear that, you guys? She said she's thrilled. I also don't say you guys on the show, so that was weird. Sorry, my friend that's listening to this episode. This isn't my YouTube channel. Hey, guys. Welcome back to the channel. Hey, friend. Welcome back to the podcast. I digress. Vanessa, welcome to the madness. So I'm so grateful for our mutual friend, Mariana, who introduced us. As I've learned, right? She did introduce us, right?
Yes, she did.
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
we were both in the Mariana fan club.
She's fantastic, super talented, super gifted. I wish she had a little bit more energy and passion for the work that she does. That would be nice, you know. I kid. But really, she has had so many great things to say about you. And as I've learned about the work that you're doing, and I've seen it, man, you've got some really cool projects under your belt and some really cool successes that I don't think we celebrate ourselves enough. But I just want to say kudos to the hard work that you've put in over the course of a lot of years and the accomplishments. Also, you're a woman, so I think that's really cool too. This industry, we just don't have enough of you. And I just love that the talent and the things that you do have created a lot of inspiration for people like Mariana, myself, and other people inside of my community. So thanks, congrats, and good night.
Well, I really appreciate that. You're right. It's sometimes we don't recognize our accomplishments enough. So thank you.
You're welcome. What would you say is like one of your proudest accomplishments? If we can let you brag here just for a minute.
I guess just to give a little bit of background, I've been working as a freelance documentary cinematographer for the last 15 years. And my absolute love in documentary is telling really sort of intimate, emotional, character-driven stories, especially featuring folks that have been marginalized or are considered outsiders. I also love working with kids. And I think my proudest accomplishment is, really just kind of throwing myself into a career that's incredibly unstable, that's incredibly unpredictable, that's incredibly competitive, that sort of makes no sense to my parents. I would say sort of in the midpoint of my career, I was able to be making like 100% of my income working on long form documentaries. And that was really, really my goal. And I've worked on some projects that I feel truly proud of. So I think just hanging in there, honestly.
Yeah.
It's been a bit of a wild ride. And, I think there's a lot more to say about being a woman in the industry, but I think my drive and passion to do the work trumped the humiliations, the inevitable sort of learning on the job that I think and all of us working in sort of video production face on some level. Like you can't do the thing until you do the thing, and you're often on someone else's dime. And I think that leads a lot of people to feel like, imposters or like they don't deserve to be there. And then if you layer on top of that sort of maybe like additional levels of scrutiny, being a woman, kind of, there was just a lot of like serious humiliations that I faced along the way. And I guess just like one thing I've learned from that is that, first of all, like it's totally normal to feel that way. Everyone kind of goes through that, but sort of just seeing that you can survive those difficult moments and that doesn't mean you're not advancing or that you're not going to continue to grow and continue to have opportunities, even if you're sort of making mistakes and not perfect all the time. And I think, putting in the reps of clocking hours in so many different settings, whether I'm working on a documentary or whether I'm shooting a, talking head interview for a brand, like I'm always learning.
Yeah, I hear all of those things, and it's just funny even listening to you describe the work that we do in that context. It's like, why the heck do we do why do we do this work? Why do we do this to ourselves? It's every craft has like its own things, nuances and challenges and whatever. But I just feel like the work that we do, not only do we, it's an art form, right? On top of all of the technical things, and it's for people's entertainment, right? In a lot of cases. And so there's just like, it's not like just making a widget where you do the thing and then it gets put in the thing and then somebody uses the thing and they're cool. Like, my life is easier because I got the thing. We're like, it's like 8,000 layers deep in that. Have you seen the show The Offer?
I have not.
Okay, so I wish you did. You need to watch it. It's sort of like the making of the movie The Godfather. So you've got director, producer, just like the whole crew and everything. And you just watch it and you're like, why do we do this to ourselves? This is like so, and I think that's my question to you is, through all of the struggle and the frustrations, what is it that keeps you coming back? Like, why do you do this work?
It's a great question. And I think, so I'll start by, I guess, just geeking out a little bit about like the life-saving role that film can make and play, I think, especially in young people's lives. So I was a super awkward teenager. I didn't have a lot of friends in high school. And, this is the late 90s. So it was a little bit of like the golden age of indie cinema. But like the Landmark Theater sort of saved me. Like that was where I went to the movies by myself a lot. And that's sort of where I fell in love with film. And I think this is going to sound cheesy, but I think fundamentally it gave me kind of hope as a young person that that I wasn't alone and I wasn't weird.
Yeah.
Or maybe I was weird, but like other people are weird too. And I think it just gave me a sense of just like the wider world of humanity and like that I had something to look forward to. And so as I sort of then went on to discover documentary, I think that feeling of just emotional connection and the ways that it makes us sort of feel less alone. And it sounds kind of cheesy, but I feel like that is really fundamentally like why I do this. I believe that documentary can build bridges emotionally to people that are you might not normally think you could relate to find sort of like a common humanity and to care about other people. I think it's incredibly powerful. But once I got, advanced forward, I went to journalism school, I got behind the camera, I completely fell in love. But I would say that for me, there's almost a spiritual feeling that I have of like complete, this is going to sound a little woo-woo, but especially when you're filming.
Here we go.
When you're filming something that's really unfolding in sort of real time, whether that you're observing someone go through something or just an emotion or a change that you're sort of bearing witness to, there is and when you're behind the camera, there is such an intense presence that you have because you have to be completely focused. It's like, if someone's talking in an interview, maybe my mind is wandering. But if something's really happening and I'm shooting handheld, like my attention is so on that person's experience. And there's like a feeling of aliveness and like the power of attention that is sort of like nothing. It's like a bit of a drug, honestly. Like I don't think I ever feel more alive than in those moments. And I also think, I think sometimes people don't always think about this, but I think that if you're a participant in a documentary and there is a crew showing up and they are like hanging on to every word And they are like, there is a real, I don't want to say a gift because that sounds like self-aggrandizing, but like to be witnessed and to have like this whole apparatus like being there and caring about you, like that can be incredibly powerful for people, especially folks who have felt like the world doesn't care. And so I would say that's like another layer, is sort of the relationships that you build on set. And I've had to sort of divorce myself in some ways from like the final outcome, because I'm not the director. I'm working for hire as a cinematographer. And so I don't always have control over how the project is realized, or, you know, the many cooks and network executives and how things end up. And so for me, so much of the joy is just the experience of the production. I mean, that's sort of like where I'm really present. So anyway, that's a long answer of saying why I do this.
Oh man, I love it. I started thinking about when, you know, I probably filmed back in the day, I don't know, a couple hundred weddings, and being in those moments and capturing, like, I think about, you know, when we found out that we were pregnant, it was on a Saturday, and I literally, like, my wife took pregnancy test, and I'm like, I don't want to do this right now because I'm like, you know, getting dressed to leave for this wedding. She's like, she's pregnant. I'm like, this is amazing. This is amazing. Then I had to, you know, drive to this wedding. I shoot that wedding. It comes to the father-daughter dance, and, you know, I got a camera in hand, and all of a sudden, like, it was like my life flashed, you know, forward. I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but, like, you know, this is like 30 years from now, and I'm like dancing with my daughter, and I'm bawling during this daddy-daughter dance, and I'm filming. But my point is, there was this addiction, I think, for the longest time, when I did weddings, because I knew the moments that we were capturing that were going to be highlighted, and it was like I just wanted more of that. And people would be like, well, doesn't it, you know, aren't you like bored of that? Because it's like, you know, it's like every couple, they just get married and they kiss, and you know the thing. And I'm like, no, man, like, you know, it's like every story is so different, and the loss that people have experienced to get them to this point. And you know, just you learn these stories, and to know that you get to play a key part in capturing these emotions is like so powerful.
I think weddings are actually such great training for people working in documentary.
100%.
One of my first jobs, just to pay the bills, like when I finished grad school, was I worked as a second camera, like for still photography for a wedding photographer. And that is like real training in like moments that if you miss them, like if you miss the kiss, like there's not a redo.
You're going to get sued.
Yeah, like, yeah, totally. You're going to get sued. But also, yeah, the feeling of all these moments that it's like the weight of generations and the expectation. Like, I felt like that was such amazing training for really being accountable to like nailing these sort of moments that don't repeat. So, yeah, I think it's like I learned so much from doing that.
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's some people that are like, I'm never, ever going to shoot a wedding. And then there are the people that are like, I shot a wedding and I'll never, ever shoot another one. And then there's everybody else that's like, oh no, this is like, I mean, it's hard work, but it's so worth it. And the crazy thing is, you know, for the first 8 years of my business, like that's what I focused on. And then we transitioned over to corporate, and I realized, I'm like, wow, this is like so easy. It's like the conditions, everything that we had to be aware of and think of. We're shooting inside with no light or crappy light. Then we go outside and we've got, you know, full sun and audio, wind. You know, we're just having to think of all of the things. So it was like the best training ground to be so flexible, to be ready to pivot at any moment. And then we start, you know, we get some documentaries for different brands and different people after we're doing weddings. And not that it was like easy, but the you know, the weight of like, man, you've got, you know, it's like one kiss, like you better get it. Or like, you know, we're working with businesses. It's like, oh, you know, we didn't get shot. Like, maybe let's try that again. You know, maybe not like super documentary style or whatever. But that really helped in the corporate commercial world. And then the documentaries that we filmed along the way, to your point about being with somebody who hasn't ever really been the focus of something like a documentary and you're interviewing them and you're really trying to get to the heart of why they do what they do, or, whatever the thing might be, I've gotten hired for multiple projects, multiple clients because of that feeling. I think I'm thinking of one client in particular that has given me such great praise as a producer, but as a person conducting interviews. The empathy that I have has, for her, put her in a spot where she's like, I've never felt like this before. And I know that feeling. And so she's introduced me to different people and had me interview other people because she just knows the feeling that I've created for her. And that is it's a huge gift to be able to have those experiences. For you, is there one project that stands out where you just like, man, this was like, it changed my life?
Yes.
And you can't say a bunch of them. I know it's probably a bunch of them.
I feel like every project I've worked on has changed my life in some way.
Yeah.
So my first sort of two major feature documentaries that I did for HBO were focused in different ways on the opioid crisis in the United States. The first one was really when the sort of prescription, it was right after Philip Seymour Hoffman had overdosed, and it was sort of like this growing awareness that OxyContin and had sort of spilled over into heroin. And I mean, this was really sort of like trial by fire. It was, I played a role. I sort of had a producing hat on. I was helping them cast the film. And I was also working in Massachusetts, which is where I'm from. So, and really kind of, there were some real stakes as far as the filming. And, two of the women that we were following actually passed away like over the course of filming. We weren't there, but it's really easy to overdose. So, I mean, those projects were, I think, deeply challenging. But I think it also taught me a lot about the importance when you're doing difficult films with really setting very clear and honest expectations with the people you're filming with about what you're doing, what you're hoping to capture, and making sure that they've really thought through like the impact of participating in a film like that might carry like in the future on their life, and really putting that out there in the beginning. And then if somebody decides that there is a larger why for why they want to participate, which is usually sort of like, I want to humanize addiction, or I want to show people that it's not what they think. That's a very powerful kind of commitment that someone's entering a project with, that helps both to feel ethically like you're co-creating something, and you're not sort of tricking people, but also helps kind of guide them through the difficult times. So I think I just grew a lot as a filmmaker across those two projects.
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about like, people's lives being at risk, that's a very different project than, one of my favorite projects is this like horse film that we did in the equestrian world. And the only thing that was at stake was like $1 million purse. It was like, okay, this is not life and death. But, I learned a lot from that project, but I can only imagine, when you're working with people to co-create this piece that could really help a lot of people and help save lives and change laws and, all of that stuff. I mean, that's like, there's a weight to that really means something.
Yeah, I will say that it can really take a toll on you over the years of working on these kind of projects. And I would say that the project I loved working on the most, which was a series for Disney Plus that followed kids in the School of American Ballet, which is basically like the feeder school for New York City Ballet. But that was just like hanging out for it ended up being cut short by COVID, but for 6 months, kind of like coming in every day to this beautiful school. They had live pianists accompanying all the classes. And these are like some of the most talented young dancers, are in the world. And so just being able to kind of like immerse in this beauty of that that for me, just not to say there's not a dark side of the ballet industry, but that it was for Disney.
Oh,
it was
yeah,
for
certainly.
Disney, so we like weren't going there.
Yeah.
And I love filming dance, so that was like I just loved viscerally working on that. That was special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's so fun when we get to work on projects that we just like, man, somebody's actually paying me to be here to witness this, and this is really cool.
Yeah. Plus, I got to keep my gear at the school, so I actually commuted on the subway because I was living in Brooklyn.
Oh,
and
man,
I felt like
how fun.
I was like, this is amazing.
Freedom.
I was like, this is how the other half lives, like going to work, riding the subway.
Oh man, that's funny.
That might have been like the best part, that I didn't have to schlep my gear every day.
Yeah. Oh man. So some of your work has screened at like South by Southwest. I can't. Yeah, I got it right. South by Southwest, Sundance. Your stuff is streamed on HBO, Netflix, other places. Just all over.
Kind of. At this point, I feel like I've hit all the major, Showtime.
Anything on YouTube? Anything on YouTube?
YouTube. Yes, I'm sure there is stuff on YouTube. Yes, my biggest accomplishment.
Yeah. It's like, how did you get on YouTube? How did you do that? Your resume is so impressive. If you looked at accomplishments or like any achievements, is there one that stands out? It's like, this is pretty cool to be recognized for this or to have this happen.
I should say that one of my proudest moments is I shot on the Netflix series Heart of Invictus, which was Prince Harry's sort of second major Netflix series. It did not make the splash that Harry and Meghan did. The Invictus Games are basically almost like a Paralympics for teams of veterans, many of whom are wounded around the world. It's a really big deal in Europe. But anyway, there was, a global team of cinematographers and producers following like teams around the globe. And I was very proud to have been assigned to the Prince Harry detail to be sort of trusted behind the scenes with Harry and Meghan. That felt like a real honor. But I will say that part of how I kind of proved myself is the very first time that I filmed with them, they didn't, I didn't even know until the day of. They were like, are you comfortable shooting with major celebrities? And I was sort of thinking like, who is this? Is this going to be Trump? Is this going to be President Biden? Like, who is this going to be? Yeah. Like, am I going to be comfortable with this? And then they told me, and I was like, okay. So anyway, I learned on that project. I've appeared many times in the British tabloids because I've learned that they are totally crazy. And they had like paparazzi, and I was filming Harry and Meghan arrived to this event in New York, and the next day I'm literally like I'm like a silhouette backlit in the headlights, and I'm like circled in red. They're like, this cameraman. First of all, they always called me a cameraman, which I found to be like kind of offensive. But I realized like, wow, these tabloids are totally bananas. But basically like 5 minutes before Harry was supposed to arrive, it was just me and the director. And we were having there was a feed issue between the wireless video feed between my camera and his monitor was off, and I was trying to troubleshoot it. And this is a little bit of an in the weeds story, but basically I was trying to fix it and I accidentally turned my, I use like a 5-inch monitor that's not like, anyway, I turned off the SDI output. And once you do that on the Sony FX9, like you lose the image entirely. You have to like actually plug in the original monitor in order to get So I'm thinking to myself, I have no image. I cannot turn it back on. This is like the most high pressure gig I've ever had. This is an Oscar-winning director. And I had parked like really kind of far away because it was like you couldn't get that close. Anyway, I sprinted to my car. Literally, like my heart was about to just explode out of my chest. I grabbed the monitor that I had like in the Pelican case in the car. I sprinted back. I plugged it in. I turned it on. I got the feedback, and they like rolled up like the next minute. And honestly, the troubleshooting that I was able to pull that off I think is sort of what like being able to kind of deal with that, like thinking under pressure, I think was part of why they like were like, okay, this chick like knows what she's doing. But it could have like so easily gone the other way. So thinking under pressure. This is the kind of training that like weddings will give you, you know?
My gosh. Yes. Yeah. Why did they circle you in the clip?
Well, I learned that like the making of a Netflix project with Harry and Meghan is like itself an ongoing news story. And so they were constantly trying to figure out like what they were doing and what the story was. And so, the whole paparazzi element to it was totally bananas. And I only understood then like why they had so many layers of secrecy around the project.
Wow. That's hilarious and amazing. That's really fun. What's one of your best techniques when you're on set, you're on a project, and they're like, okay, like we've got 10 minutes to go in. We're gonna have to shoot this interview outside or whatever, but we need to get B-roll inside. We have no idea what it's like in there. We don't even have like that much of a story or anything. So like, but you gotta just get some coverage. You got 10 minutes on your market set, go. Like, what do you do?
So I do a lot of filming in people's homes, often not having like location photos, not knowing what I'm going into. So I'm working a lot with available light, very rarely lighting anything outside of like a sit-down interview. So usually when I come into a space, the first thing I do is I turn off the overhead lights. So I'm always trying to work with windows and natural light. So usually turn off the overhead lights, mess with the curtains a little bit. So I'll often like adjust blinds. One of the things that has revolutionized the way that I shoot, and I think that allows you to be very speedy. I used to shoot with an easy rig. And when I switched to a hip shot, which is like a waist belt that has a little camera platform that sticks into your hip, that has allowed me to be incredibly fast, where I'm going between like shoulder and hip, and it can be incredibly steady, almost like a tripod, but with the way I'm kind of cradling my camera. And so that will, like if I'm going into a space, and it's appropriate stylistically to, often the projects I'm working on are handheld. And so B-roll that's also like a little bit handheld is sort of stylistically integrated. So by not using a tripod and shooting from my hip, I'm usually able to get like a lot of different angles. And, I think one thing that's really important for all the projects I work on is just, even though I'm like, the person behind the camera, I'm always sort of having to wear a director's hat and really be tuned in to kind of like, what is the story we're telling here? What are the dynamics? And when I think about B-roll, when I think the word B-roll, I get bored. Like, I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes it's like, I have to go shoot B-roll. I've started to change the way that I'm thinking about this, and I started thinking about it more as world building. So if you think about a novel where like all of the details are kind of building the world of these characters, and B-roll, which can sound unimportant and boring, if you watch a documentary, is actually so important for like these interstitial elements, even if it's a completely observational film, that we have these interstitial elements where you're building the sense of place. Sometimes it bothers me, like if I'm in a location and we're like going around town in a place that we don't live, and it's sort of like, let's just get some B-roll of the town. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, what do we want to say about the town? Like, are we trying to make the town seem like it's down on its luck? Do we want to shoot this at night? Do we want to shoot this often this sort of B-roll can be an afterthought. You're shooting it like over your lunch break. It's high noon. And so I really try to it's helped me to think, to kind of delete the word B-roll from my vocabulary and to really think about like, how are my details building this world, building this space, and kind of like ultimately speaking to the character of the folks we're following. And that's been like a bit of a maybe like mental trick. And I don't know if other people relate to feeling like, oh, I gotta shoot B-roll. But it's helped remind me that this is actually like so key, and so much of a film will actually be these visual sequences as we get into and out of the scenes. The viewer needs space to take in whatever's happened, and we're often building these visual sequences. And so I think that I'm I'm often trying to have more detailed conversations with directors about like, let's not have B-roll be an afterthought. Like, let's really plan. Let's think about, you know, you can't put money on like the quality of the sun at certain times of day. So like, let's set ourselves up for success and like go shoot during these hours. And so I'm often kind of really engaging in a dialogue about like a schedule and, you know, how can we really work, especially on a documentary where you're not doing a lot of lighting, like how can we work with the sun basically to really elevate what we're doing?
Yeah, that's good. I would almost think about like, what would it, if we only got audio from the interview and we had to tell the story, you know, it's not like, oh, you know, let's go get some B-roll. It's like, oh, no. Like, this is the world. We have to create the whole thing. And if we're lucky, maybe we'll get to use a shot or two of the interview, right? A lot different approach when you start thinking about building the world. I like that. That's cool. Do you have like a favorite documentary that you've seen where you're just like, man, this B-roll is just off the charts. It's so good. Or world building roll, whatever we call it.
Yeah. A film that I think that you can watch right now on Netflix that I think has gorgeous visuals out, like both gorgeous scenes, but also has really built these very lush visual sequences is the film Daughters. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's basically a story about a father-daughter dance that happens inside of a prison. So these are young girls whose fathers are incarcerated. And it's brilliant on so many levels. First of all, I'm obsessed with documentaries that are sort of time bound because it's so easy for a documentary to go on for sprawling for year after year after year. Perfect. And so basically they're following like the couple months leading up to the dance. That's sort of like the main emotional climax of the film. And then it kind of follows them for a couple more years. But the cinematographer on that film actually comes more from like the commercial. He shoots more like commercials. So he's not like a pure documentary cinematographer. And I felt like the way that he filmed with the girls and in their homes was really spectacular. And it's wow. I mean, you will like, I saw the film in a theater and it was like, there was not a dry eye, and like, you cannot watch this film, especially if you have a daughter or like a child. It is just like, it's one of my favorite documentaries of all time.
Dang.
It was like on the Oscar shortlist, but it was not actually nominated. But I think it's like, I think it's phenomenal. I highly recommend it.
So good. Wow. Very good. All right. I want to, we're winding down here. Unfortunately, I know I told you we could like do this forever. What about like any like interview techniques that you're just like, oh my gosh, this works. We get magic whenever this happens. Whenever we do this, we're able to get magic. Do you have anything like that that you can share with us?
So, you know, as someone who's hired to just be behind the camera, I'm not typically actually conducting interviews, but working as a DP for hire has been an amazing education in directing because I just get to work with so many different directors and like see so many different approaches. And I would say like the best interview tactic is silence. Ooh. So there are these like awkward moments in the interview where you want to ask the next question, and the directors that just let that moment hang, the person will feel the awkwardness and often will continue to speak because they're trying to fill it. And it's often after they're kind of forced, or not forced, but like often the thing they'll say after a silence like can be like very powerful. I will also say I'm often instructed to roll as they're sitting down, as they're getting mic'd, and I continue rolling after we've like officially wrapped. Because often also people, when they feel like the interview is over and they kind of like go like, ooh, and then they like say the thing and you're like, oh man, I wish I was. Oh, so actually to that end, I do not use a recording tally light. So like the red light on the camera, I either cover it with gaff tape or I turn it off because I think it's a real telegraph to people. Like I am rolling, I am not rolling. And I think that the less that in a documentary context that people can have an awareness of like, all right, action, like, okay, cut.
Yeah.
The less they can kind of be thinking about that, the better that I can kind of flow and capture these sort of like more off the cuff moments. And I think that that applies even in like, you know, like any kind of interview setting.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as people think they're on, it's like, oh, okay, now I'm on. Okay, now I can't mess up. And you're right. It's like every time we're like, okay, we got it. We're good. You're all set. Then there's that big like sigh of like, man, that was like, I mean, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but geez. Yeah. So anyway, you know how I was telling you that one story, really what happened, it's like, oh my gosh. Okay, let's not move. What about, what am I listening to right now? I'm listening to Never Split the Difference. The guy from the CIA or FBI that would do like hostage negotiations. One of the things that he talks about is mirroring. And I'm curious if there are any directors that you've worked with that you've seen where somebody will say like, I lost my dad when I was, 25 years old. Oh, wow, you lost your dad when you were 25 years old. That's the technique. And then the person just kind of like, it's very similar to like the silence. Like we're going to create this moment where somebody feels like they need to fill the time. But when you mirror, people will they'll continue to go on. Have you seen that in practice?
That's really interesting. I feel like that also sounds sort of like a therapist technique. Like, what I hear you're saying is like, that this is really painful for you or, I think that I have seen, so I think in the moment, like, directors are usually doing a lot of like very empathetic, like nodding because they're trying not to like talk over the person. But I think one thing I've seen that's been very effective with directors is they'll kind of summarize back, like what I'm hearing is, and then, or they'll say sort of an observation about like, so not just like mirroring exactly back, but kind of saying like, this is sort of what I'm thinking about what you're saying. And it gives the person an opportunity to either be like, yes, and then go deeper. Or if it's kind of off, it can be like, no, that's not it at all. And then I think it can be a trust building process too, because I think it's important in a documentary for the person who's participating to have some clue of like, what is the director doing? Like, what are they thinking about me? Like, how is this landing for them? And so I think opportunities to sort of recap, like the thought process of the director, I actually think it can be very trust building. Not to mention, like, you can learn like, oh, I actually totally have this wrong. I'm off. I have my own tangent here. Right. And they're like,
yeah, there's that part too.
So
I love that. That's really good. Okay. We can't keep going. You have a lot of cool things happening. You are a gifted educator. You are helping a lot of people that are in this space. I mean, this audience, the people that I'm hanging out with, there are, a good handful of documentary filmmakers. Most of the people in my orbit are in the corporate commercial space. And a lot of them, if they could do what they want, if they could pick their projects, they would pick documentary style, pieces, things like causes, things that matter to them. So there's a lot of this, documentary storytelling. How do we do this for brands? How do we humanize brands? And I know some of the stuff that you're doing, I think can help people like us running studios, whether we're solo or we have a team or whatever, but are trying to work more with businesses and tell powerful stories, because we know that people buy stuff based on emotion. And if we can create any kind of emotion for, a boring brand that just talks about their features, what are some of the ways that people could kind of get plugged into the world of Vanessa Carr?
I've had this career shooting and traveling and working full-time as a cinematographer. And then I became a mom, and suddenly getting on an airplane every time I needed to get a paycheck was like not tenable. And so I took a step back. Actually, Mariana, this is full circle moment. She had been bugging me for months. Like, you should teach an online course. You should teach an online course. And I was thinking like, I don't want to be one of these like guys on YouTube with like hot tips. Like that just,
hey guys,
like here's like 3 hot tips about whatever. I was like, this just makes my skin crawl. But I decided I didn't want to travel, and I created a documentary cinematography intensive, which I'm now in my 4th cohort. And basically, I discovered that I'm incredibly passionate about kind of pulling back the curtain on this industry. And I feel like as I was talking with more filmmakers at different walks of life, is that so many people feel like they're like, am I doing this right? Like, I'm kind of like making this up as I go along. And it just like turns out that that's kind of what everybody's doing. And I felt that early in my career, I did not have access to mentorship. I felt like I had to learn everything the hard way. I just realized I felt really passionate about kind of pulling back the curtain and all that and helping people. I also would say, so basically I created DocHouse, which is a larger tent that I'm like the only instructor, but my vision for it is really to be like an online kind of professional documentary school that's accessible, and that brings in other voices and other masterclasses. It's funny because the documentary industry itself, a lot of filmmakers are trying to figure out how they can get more into the branded and corporate world because there are fewer opportunities as these streamers have pulled back on financing documentaries. But one thing that I tell people, whether you're working in sort of more the branded space or documentaries, I truly believe that making personal work, especially like real stories, documentaries, I think is like a call. Like from what I've seen among other successful documentary filmmakers that have very lucrative commercial careers, it's often their documentary projects that they are like self-funding, that is getting the attention of the brands, because it's the most unfiltered version of your vision before there's like, all these cooks and all these brand things and all, the vision gets watered down over time. And so I do feel like even if people aren't working professionally in documentary, that finding opportunities to make small projects that are like close to the heart can be a really powerful tool in standing out and attracting clients.
I love that. So for the filmmaker that is interested in learning more about DocHouse, where should they go? What could they do?
So I recently launched the DocHouse website. It's dochouse.co. Also on Instagram, DocHouse Official. So it's DOCHOUSE. I thought about calling it HAUS, but I was told that was like, got kind of mixed reviews about the German spelling. So I decided to do the HOUSE. I have some free resources on the website. I actually have a private podcast that 4-part series where I really kind of like pull back the studs of my career and share kind of like a lot of sort of, I try to really boil down like what was responsible for my success and share that with people. And I will be launching another round of the documentary cinematography intensive later this year. I'd love to hear from people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I know there were some people from the Studio Sherpas community that joined you on this most recent cohort. So excited for that, for them. I'm grateful to know you and excited for some of the stuff that we're going to be doing in the future. So appreciate you coming on today and sharing all this. I know people are going to benefit. I'm taking notes. I'm like, oh yeah, these are good notes for my B-roll, my world roll, interviewing techniques, just all the things. But love your story, love your successes. Really appreciate you sharing today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, friend. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If there was something that stood out and you're just like, man, this was really good, I want to start doing this, or I want to stop doing this, let me know. If you had an aha moment, you can leave a comment below in the video, or you can email me, Ryan, R-Y-A-N, @studiosherpas.com. I would love to hear from you. We always respond unless it ends up in spam. So your message is not going to just sit in the ether. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget about the 10X Filmmaker Workshop at studiosherpas.com/10xfilmmaker. If you like this show, feel free to take a screenshot of it, head over to the Spotify, or the Apple Podcast sites. Leave us a review. Let us know, do you like this? 5 stars? Yeah. 1 star? Not good. You wasted my time. Any of that is very helpful, helps the algorithm, helps get more exposure to the show. Even I think negative reviews help get exposure to the show. So just share your heart. Would appreciate that. Anyway, much love to you, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll talk to you real soon. See ya.